"You'll never survive without me," he said, sipping the coffee I brewed. In the kitchen I cleaned. In the house, my salary kept warm. He didn't even look up from the paper, just let it slide out his mouth like it wasn't the 5th time he'd said it this year. "My name is Dolores Ann Whitfield. I'm 48 years old, born and raised outside Macon, Georgia. And this is the story of how I learned that silence can be louder than revenge." We'd been married 21 years by then. Longer than some houses stay standing, longer than most folks keep a job. And in all that time, I played my part. Wife, nurse, listener, fixer, forgiver. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being a woman to him. I became a utility, a convenience, something to lean on, withdraw from, depend on, but never respect. I still remember the first day we met, like an old gospel record with a scratch right before the chorus. It was a birthday barbecue down in Warner Robins. He had on a blue Braves cap, tilted to the side like he carried secrets, and swagger both. The air smelled like charcoal, sweet tea, and somebody's auntie's perfume. I was 26, working double shifts at Houston Medical, half exhausted, half dreaming of a front porch swing and 2 rocking chairs. He walked right up and said, "You got the kind of smile that make a man forget what he was about to say." I laughed so hard I choked on my lemonade. That night, under those yellow porch lights, he walked me to my car and said, "You feel like home." Back then I thought that was romantic. Years later, I realized some people say home when they really mean ownership. He was ambitious, charming, could talk his way into a room and back out of a consequence. When he said he wanted to start his own trucking company, I believed him. I co-signed the loan, signed the checks, smiled through the paperwork, used the little savings I'd built from nursing school to buy his first rig. "It's ours," I told him. "We'll build this together." He kissed my forehead and said, "You my backbone, Dee." But ours turned into his, faster than Georgia summer lightning. His name on the business license, his signature on the contracts. When I asked why my name wasn't there, he waved me off. "You don't need all that, baby. You got your hospital job. Let me handle the paperwork." He said it smooth, like he was protecting me. But protection without partnership is just control in disguise. I should have slowed down right then, should have read between the lines instead of signing under them. But Southern women like me are taught to love like it's labor. Quiet, constant, unquestioned. My mama used to say, "Keep your family business quiet and your mouth quieter." So I did. The first 5 years, I made excuses. "He's just tired. He's under pressure." He don't mean it like that. But time has a way of showing you what people think you're worth. He stopped asking about my day, stopped looking me in the eye. He'd come home smelling like cologne I didn't buy, carrying stories that didn't add up. I'd sit in my scrubs on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through the joint account like it held confessions. Withdrawals. 500 here, 200 there. Hotel charges in Savannah. A steakhouse bill on a Wednesday night. The same night he swore he was stuck on I-16 with a busted axle. I confronted him once. He didn't blink. "You getting paranoid," he said. "You need to learn how to trust your man." That line sat in my chest like spoiled milk, not because I believed it, but because it was his favorite shield. He said it when the mortgage ran short 2 Christmases ago. He said it when I found lingerie receipts in his jacket. He said it when his phone accidentally wiped itself clean. Trust me. But trust without truth is a slow kind of death. Then came the day he humiliated me, my sister Tanya's birthday. Backyard lights strung up, peach cobbler cooling on the counter, ribs on the smoker. I'd spent all morning cleaning, marinating, setting the table just right. He spent all morning criticizing. Music too low. Beer too warm. Where's the lighter? By the time guests arrived, he'd already emptied a 6-pack and filled the air with arrogance. When Tanya looked around and said, "Dolores, this place is beautiful. You really made it a home," he leaned back, beer bottle dangling, and laughed loud enough for the neighbors. "Well, technically I made the home. She just decorated it." The yard went quiet, then laughter rippled. Awkward, polite, the kind that tries to hide discomfort. I smiled because women like me are trained to smooth over men's rough edges. But inside, something snapped. Not loud, just final. After they left, I washed every glass, loaded the dishwasher, and went to bed without a word. Because sometimes, silence isn't surrender. It's setup. The next morning, I called in sick, sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, the same seat he used for his morning insults. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the soft tick of the wall clock. I opened my laptop and pulled up every bank statement from the last 2 years, printed them one by one. The paper smelled like toner and truth. I highlighted every withdrawal, every transfer, every transaction that whispered betrayal. Then I slid them into a folder, labeled it in red ink, just in case. Didn't know what I was building yet, but I knew I was done being blind. He thought he was the only strategist in the house. He didn't realize I'd been watching, learning. And when a nurse starts documenting, it means the patient's prognosis just changed. He noticed my stillness but mistook it for peace, started talking louder, staying out later, wearing that new cologne like a warning sign. Men like him, they confuse silence for surrender, calm for consent. He strutted through that house like king of the castle, never realizing the castle had termites. And I was the one holding the bug spray. 2 weeks later, HR called me into the office. They wanted to promote me. Senior nursing manager, better pay, flexible schedule, real authority. When I said yes, my supervisor hugged me and said, "Dolores, you earned this." Those words hit me harder than I expected, because at home I hadn't heard "you earned this" in over a decade. That night, I told him the news. He didn't congratulate me, didn't even look up from the TV. "So you think you a boss now?" he said. "You too emotional for leadership." He chuckled like it was a joke, but his tone wasn't playful. It was fear dressed as arrogance. Later that night, I sat in the dark living room, the TV glow flickering across the family photos, our wedding picture, me in ivory lace, him in that same cocky smile, a younger me, trusting, soft. I studied her like she was a stranger. "Would you recognize me now?" I whispered. The woman in that frame had faith. The woman staring back from the window had facts. I thought about every version of "you'll never survive without me." The morning he said it when the truck broke down. The night he said it after losing a client. The time he said it just because he could. Each one built a wall between us. And now those words were bricks I planned to use for my own foundation. I thought of all the times I stretched meals, clipped coupons, skipped new shoes just to make his truck payments. Every birthday he forgot, every time he made me feel small in a house I helped build. The weight of it pressed on my chest. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. Rage can burn a woman up from the inside. But clarity? That's fuel. That night, I made a promise to myself. Not revenge, not rage, just freedom. Quiet, legal, and permanent. Because the best kind of leaving is the kind that doesn't announce itself. It files the papers, changes the locks, reroutes the mail. It smiles politely and says, "Bless your heart," while walking away for good. I didn't know yet how it would unfold, only that it would. And for the first time in 21 years, I slept sound. The kind of sleep that comes when a woman finally decides her silence has an expiration date. After that night, everything changed. But I didn't tell a soul. Not Tanya, not the girls at work, not even Miss Pearl down at the salon who could smell a broken marriage faster than she could press a curl. I just got quiet, focused, measured. Because when a woman like me decides to move in silence, the world won't even hear the floorboards creak until the whole house shifts. At the hospital, I kept my same rhythm. Clock in, chart vitals, smile at patients, say, "Yes, doctor," even when he was wrong. But under that polished routine, my mind was drawing blueprints. Not for another man, but for another life. The first thing I needed was knowledge. The kind of knowing that couldn't be sweet-talked or gaslit out of me again. So on lunch breaks, I'd eat my sandwich in the hospital break room, my back to the vending machine hum, while reading about Georgia's spousal asset laws, divorce statutes, equitable property division, how joint accounts get split, how hidden assets get traced, how women like me could walk away with more than their dignity. When the nurses gossiped about TV shows, I was flipping pages on silent business dissolution. I learned the language men used to hide things: reinvestment, vendor advance, equipment write-off. Then I learned how to translate it into my language, receipts, and I started making copies of everything: bank statements, insurance policies, tax returns from the past decade, title documents for the truck, the house, even the old lawnmower. I dug through drawers, filing cabinets, glove boxes, receipts from business trips that lined up too neatly with hotel stays in Savannah, Charleston, Columbus. Always a city just far enough for a lie to breathe. He thought he was slick. Forgot who balanced the checkbook in this house. Forgot who taught him how to spell budget when we first got married. So I let the paperwork speak for me. Quiet pages. Loud truth. Every morning before work, I'd slip new documents into a fireproof lockbox I bought from Office Depot with cash. No trace on the debit card. No questions asked. I tucked it beneath the stack of spare towels in the linen closet. The white ones with embroidered lace he never touched. He called that my section. That made me laugh sometimes, thinking how men love their territory, until the land changes owners overnight. Meanwhile, he kept getting louder, bolder. Like he thought his bark would drown out the whisper of fear he didn't even know he should be smelling. One night he came home late, reeking of beer and fake confidence. He slapped a thick envelope down on the table. "New client," he said, chest puffed. "Big contract. We'll be swimming in money by Christmas." I looked at him over my teacup. The steam curled between us like a ghost. "Good for you," I said softly. He didn't notice the envelope was still sealed when I slid it into the drawer. Didn't notice I hadn't said "we" in weeks. That was the night I realized my silence wasn't submission anymore. It was strategy. A week later, I walked into the credit union downtown. Small building, brick facade, smelled like pine sol and fresh carpet. The teller smiled, asked for my ID. I handed over one with my maiden name, Dolores Ann Whitfield. Never legally changed it, just hyphenated when he insisted. Funny how that small detail became my loophole to freedom. I opened what I called my legacy fund. Automatic transfer from my paycheck every other Friday. Small enough not to raise suspicion, steady enough to grow roots. Legacy. Because this wasn't just about escape. This was about planting something that would outlive his ego. For me. For every woman who ever whispered, "I can't leave. I won't survive." Then came the moment the scales tipped for good. He was napping on the couch, TV still mumbling about football. I was cleaning out the glove box of his truck. He never locked it, said, "Ain't nobody stealing from me. Folks know better." Inside, under crumpled gas receipts, I found a second phone. Cheap, prepaid. The kind of phone used for side conversations and secrets. Before I could even breathe, the screen lit up. "You coming back for Memorial Day? I miss you." No name, just a number. The words glowed like heat off asphalt. I didn't open it, didn't scroll, didn't shake. And that calm told me everything I needed to know. About him. About me. About how far I'd already left without leaving. I walked back inside, set the phone on the kitchen counter, turned the volume all the way up. Then I stepped out into the garden, the one I planted behind the fence, and pulled weeds for an hour. The soil was warm under my nails, the air thick with the smell of honeysuckle. Inside, through the window, I saw him stir. Glance around, pick up the phone. He froze, then set it down. Never said a word, and neither did I. That silence? That was the funeral for what we used to be. The next week, I met with a lawyer. Black woman, mid-50s, sharp as a switchblade and calm as a prayer. Her name was Attorney Beverly Knox. She had the kind of presence that made even lies straighten up. Thick frame slid down her nose whenever she got serious. I liked her instantly. When I handed her my folder, 3 inches thick by then, she flipped through, whistled low. "Dolores," she said, "you ain't just ready, you're overqualified." We both laughed, but beneath it was a hush, the kind women recognize when something sacred has ended and something righteous is beginning. "This isn't about heartbreak anymore," I said quietly. She nodded. "It's about reclaiming dignity." Exactly. She laid out my options like playing cards. Legal separation, quiet buyout, asset division, temporary support if I wanted to twist the knife. I didn't. All I wanted were clean exits and clean hands. But she warned me. "He's gonna feel it. Men like him don't go down easy." I said, "I'm not here to bring him down. I'm here to lift myself up." She smiled then. The kind of smile women share when they know another one just remembered her worth. Back home, I kept the rhythm of normalcy, folded his clothes, cooked when I felt like it, watched the Falcons lose while he shouted at the screen like the team's failure was mine. I wasn't pretending, I was preparing. There's a difference. He'd sit on the couch, beer in hand, yelling at referees. I'd be beside him, nodding sometimes, but my iPad glowed faintly with spreadsheets and scanned documents. He never noticed, because arrogance blinds better than love ever did. Then one evening, late August, the air sticky with heat and fried grease, I was standing at the stove, catfish popping in the skillet, hush puppies browning golden on the paper towel. The kitchen smelled like home. Ironic, considering how far from home I felt. He leaned in the doorway, chewing sunflower seeds, grinning like the devil just told him a joke. "You know," he said, "I was talking to Marcus." I kept my back to him, kept stirring. He said he don't know how I keep you in check. Said you was always the independent type." He laughed. I told him, "Sometimes you gotta let 'em think they got power. That's how you keep 'em from leaving." The oil sizzled louder, covering the sound of my heartbeat. I flipped the fish, calm as church. "Dinner's almost ready," I said. He smirked, grabbed a beer, walked off like he'd just shared wisdom. Didn't notice the way my hands had stopped trembling. That night, I stood in front of the mirror. The bathroom light flickered, humming soft. I looked at my reflection. Tired eyes, steady gaze. And I whispered something I hadn't said since I was 23. "I am enough." The words landed heavy, real, not an affirmation, a verdict, because now I had everything that mattered, the documents, the passwords, the accounts, the lawyer, and most important, the plan. All I needed now was the moment. The moment came 2 weeks later, early May, that kind of Georgia heat that slips in before it's invited, thick, nosy, and everywhere at once. It crawled through open windows like gossip and made my curls coil tighter the minute I stepped outside. Magnolias blooming too fast, azaleas heavy with bees. The whole world felt swollen, restless, but I was calm, real calm. Because I'd been waiting on this particular Tuesday like it was church. That morning, I got dressed for work just like always. Scrubs pressed, earrings small enough not to catch, hair slicked into a low bun that said, professional but tired. I packed my lunch, leftover greens and cornbread in a Tupperware with my name on the lid, and moved quiet through the house. He was in the recliner, half asleep, TV still murmuring from the night before. His chest rose and fell heavy, one sock on, one off. The air smelled like stale beer and motor oil. I leaned down, kissed his forehead. "Have a good day," I whispered. He grunted something that might have been, But I didn't go to work. I drove straight to the courthouse. Macon's courthouse sits on a hill, white columns and wide steps that bake under the sun. The flag out front barely moved, hanging limp in the heat. I parked around, back under a pecan tree where nobody I knew would see my car. walked inside with my folder tucked tight under my arm. Miss Trina, the filing clerk, looked up from behind her desk, glasses halfway down her nose. She'd been working there since my mama's day, seen more divorces than weddings. "Dolores Ann Whitfield," she said, flipping her pen between her fingers. "You sure?" I smiled, calm and full. "I've been sure," I told her. "I just needed the system to catch up with me." She nodded slow. Then let's get you free, baby." The paperwork slid across the counter like silk. No tears, no begging, no raised voices, just Georgia law and a woman who'd done her homework. By the time I left that building, I had proof of separation stamped and sealed. No fireworks, no audience, just sunlight on marble and my reflection in the glass door, still standing, still steady. I'd already laid the groundwork. The house? Refinanced months earlier, in my name only. Took savings, strategy, and one late-night favor from my cousin Dennis, who co-signed without asking too many questions. "Family gotta look out for each other," he said, and that was that. The truck that used to have both our names sold 3 days ago. I'd cleaned it spotless, listed it under a different zip code, and met the buyer, a polite man from Athens, at a diner parking lot. He handed me a cashier's check. We shook hands, and I watched that truck pull away like a ghost I'd finally buried. That money went straight to clearing our last joint debts. Closed every credit card in one swoop while I sat on the porch, sipping sweet tea and watching the sunset stain the sky orange. Freedom doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it shows up disguised as paperwork and porch light. By noon, I had the final piece, a notarized letter from the county registrar confirming full ownership of my property. My property. The words looked holy, printed in black ink. I slipped the letter into a gold envelope. It felt right. Not to gloat, but to mark the moment. A ceremony of closure. Because in some way, this was a gift. Not to him, but to myself. That evening, I cooked dinner. Pot roast, green beans, mashed potatoes. The kind of meal that made him feel like everything was still normal. The house filled with the smell of onion and thyme, the slow simmer of meat whispering in the pot. He came in around 7, smelling of heat and engine grease, muttering about gas prices and folks who don't know how to drive. He tossed his keys on the counter, rubbed his neck, and said, "Smells good in here." I smiled. "Long day?" "Always," he said, grabbing a beer. "You wouldn't understand." I handed him a plate, watched him eat. He chewed slow, loud, talking about nothing. Football, politics, some new client he didn't really have. When he reached for the remote, I placed the gold envelope right on top. He, frowned. "What's this?" "Your early retirement package." He chuckled, mouth full. "Girl, quit playin'." I didn't blink, didn't smile. "Open it," I said. He tore the flap, still half amused. The laughter died before the paper finished unfolding. First page, property deed. In my name only. Stamped, dated, verified. Second page, notice of business dissolution. Finalized with a quiet clause I'd slipped in 2 weeks earlier. He hadn't noticed when I'd asked him to sign the insurance renewal. Should have read the fine print. Next came the bank statements, highlighted, annotated. Every withdrawal, every lie, every steak dinner that wasn't with me. His face changed, color rising from his neck to his hairline. "You been spying on me?" I shook my head. "No, I've been protecting myself." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out, just air and shock. "I'm not yelling," I said quietly, "because this isn't about punishment. It's about peace." He slammed his hand on the table. "You can't do this. You can't just—" "I already did." Silence thickened between us. The clock ticked loud. Outside, cicadas screamed like a choir. For the first time in a long time, he looked at me. Really looked. Not past me, not through me. At me. And what he saw scared him. Not rage, not tears. Calm. Unshakable. Documented calm. He walked to the bedroom, came back with his phone. Started dialing. I slid a copy of the court filing across the table. "You might want to wait before calling anybody," I said. "You're legally bound to stay off this property until transition arrangements are set. Your lawyer will get the details in the morning." He froze. The phone slipped in his hand. "Dolores, what the hell happened to you?" I smiled, just enough to let him know he was looking at someone he no longer recognized. "You happened to me," I said, "and then I happened back." He grabbed his keys, muttered something I didn't bother catching, and stormed out. The door slammed. The house trembled. But I didn't. I stood there in the kitchen, surrounded by half-eaten dinner and the hum of the fridge, listened to the sound of my own breath, clean, even, whole. It was the first time in months I could hear it without static. The next day, I changed the locks, called the utility companies, filed a restraining boundary request. Nothing dramatic, just enough to keep peace legal. When I went back to work, the nurses asked, "You okay, Dee?" I smiled. I'm getting there. And I was. Each day after felt like peeling something off. A heavy, invisible skin I'd been carrying too long. Freedom hurt a little. The way bare feet ache after walking miles in tight shoes. But that soreness? That was proof of movement. Of course, he fought it. Men like him always do. Filed claims. Said I forged signatures. That I manipulated him. But Attorney Knox came prepared. Witnesses. Notarizations. Paper trails. Every signature matched. Every timeline aligned. Every accusation collapsed under fact. All by the book. All in silence. 2 weeks later, he showed up again, pulled into the driveway with his brother riding shotgun, both of them puffed up with false courage. The car engine cut, and the air went still. I stepped onto the porch with a cup of coffee. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't move from the top step. He started talking fast, too fast, threats and blame tumbling out like broken parts. His brother watched me, nervous. Then another car pulled in, sleek, black, deliberate. My lawyer. She stepped out slow, heels clicking on the gravel, folder in hand. "Mr. Whitfield," she said, smooth as gospel. "I anticipated this visit." She handed him an envelope. He tore it open, read the first page, and I watched the color drain out his face, red, then gray, then gone. He didn't say a word, just turned, climbed back into the car, and drove off. I haven't seen him since. But a week later, I got a postcard in the mail. No return address, just a postmark from some small town I'd never been to. The front showed a beach at sunset, quiet, empty. On the back, 4 words written in his hand. "Guess you didn't need me after all." I read it once, set it on the counter, let the wind from the open window lift it, carry it to the floor. Didn't pick it up. Didn't need to. Because some silences echo louder than screams. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of space, full of clarity, full of the kind of peace that don't make noise but wraps around you like a shawl. One you didn't even know you needed until the chill left your bones. For the first time in 21 years, my mornings belonged to me. I woke up to the sound of my own alarm. Not his footsteps, not the clatter of his keys, just the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the first lights slipping through the blinds. My house looked different now. Same walls, same floors, but the energy had shifted. I could feel it in the air, light and unbothered, like the house itself had exhaled. My feet touched the hardwood, floors I helped pay for but never claimed, and the warmth rose straight into my chest. The scent of hazelnut coffee filled the kitchen, curling into every corner like a gentle reminder that peace could smell sweet too. No questions, no complaints, no man behind me asking where his socks were or why his eggs weren't fried hard enough. Just quiet, blessed, sacred quiet. At work, I stepped into my new position like it had been waiting for me all along. Senior nurse manager. It wasn't just a title. It was testimony. I had an office now with an actual door that closed and a little gold nameplate that caught the morning light. Inside, I kept a glass jar full of butterscotch for the staff. Miss D's candy, they called it. Every time one of the younger nurses stopped by for a handful, I'd say, "Now don't forget to eat real food, too." They'd laugh, but some of them lingered, not for candy, but for counsel. They trusted me, asked for my advice, and I gave it freely, not just as a nurse, but as a woman who had learned the hard way that control isn't about volume. It's about direction. I started doing little things for myself, things that didn't require permission or apology. Bought a new dress, emerald green, soft as moss, with sleeves that kissed my wrists. I wore it to church one Sunday, my hair pressed and curled just right. Sister Jeanette, who'd known me since high school, leaned in and whispered, "Dolores, you glowing like God just whispered to you." I smiled. He did, every morning lately. Because he did, not in thunder or verses, but in the silence between sips of coffee, in the way sunlight caught the rim of my cup, in the feeling of my shoulders relaxing without asking for permission. One Saturday, I cleaned out the last of his things, folded his shirts, the ones I'd ironed for decades, into neat, impersonal squares, packed up his tools, the ones that gathered more dust than use, even found a shoebox tucked in the back of the closet, full of receipts from hotels and dinners he thought I'd never see. I didn't cry, didn't curse, just folded, taped, and labeled, set the boxes on the edge of the porch. He never came for them. Weeks later, I donated the good coats to the shelter down off Houston Road. The rest went in the trash. No ceremony, no bitterness, just release. I didn't hate him. That's the part most folks won't understand. I didn't need to destroy him. I just needed to release myself from the version of me that tolerated being less. There's a difference. That night, my sister Tanya came by with a bottle of sweet red and a laugh big enough to fill the room. She flopped on my couch, kicked off her shoes, and said, "I knew something was up. You've been walking different." I laughed. Freedom changes your posture. We clinked glasses, kicked back, and watched reruns of Family Feud until our sides hurt. The kind of laughter that comes from deep in your ribs, where the old pain used to live. And for the first time in years, I didn't glance at the clock, didn't brace for a door slam, didn't lower my volume to keep the peace. I laughed like the whole world could hear me, and I didn't care if it did. 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrived. Return address, his lawyer. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd built my plan, and opened it slowly. He was requesting mediation. The language was careful. Discuss options. Rebuild trust. Consider reconciliation. I read it once, folded it neatly, slid it into a folder labeled Past. Didn't even call my attorney. She already knew the answer before I did. Instead, I wrote my own letter, not to him, but to myself, on clean white paper, in blue ink, dated it, folded it, sealed it, slipped it into the back of my journal. It said, "You survived what you weren't supposed to. You thrived in silence. You didn't need revenge. You needed redefinition. And baby, you did that." I read it twice, then smiled. That letter wasn't closure. It was continuation. Later that month, I drove to Savannah, booked a small bed and breakfast near the river, the kind of place that smelled like lemon polish and linen. My room had lace curtains and a little balcony that caught the salt air. In the mornings, I walked by the water with my sandals in my hand, letting the tide flirt with my toes. In the evenings, I ate shrimp and grits at a cafe called Miss Ella's, where the waitress called me ma'am, and the biscuits were so soft they practically apologized for melting. One night, I sat on a bench overlooking the river, lights reflecting off the water, slow and golden. I thought about all the women I'd met in hospital halls over the years, the ones with tired eyes and quiet voices, the ones who smiled too quick when you asked, "You okay?" Who said, "It's fine," too often. I wanted to gather them all up and show them this calm, this proof that you can walk through fire and still smell like cocoa butter on the other side. When I got home, I started something new, a monthly dinner. No men, no drama, no hierarchy. Just women and laughter and the sound of plates clinking. I cooked. Others brought dishes. We passed cornbread and stories like communion, laughed about our exes, our jobs, our children, our dreams. Every dinner ended with one rule: no apologies for joy. One evening, my niece Nia, 27, brilliant, still figuring herself out, lingered after everyone else left. She sat across from me, chin resting on her hand. "Auntie," she said softly, "how'd you do it? How'd you really walk away?" I looked her dead in the eye. Paperwork, patience, and prayer. She laughed. "You serious?" I nodded. "Baby, that's the holy trinity of freedom." She didn't understand yet, but she would. Life would show her the way it showed me. Slow, steady, and silent until it's not. That night, after she left, I blew out the candles and stood in the doorway. The house glowed in the soft light. Calm, clean, mine. No ghosts, no guilt, no noise, just the kind of peace that stays. I realized then, I hadn't just left him. I'd built something under me so solid that when I finally stepped away, I didn't fall. I rose. Spring came early that year. The snow melted off the porch steps before Valentine's Day, and the tulips I'd planted 3 years ago peeked through the thaw like they knew something new was growing in the soil. Not just flowers, something freed. I stood at the front window, hands wrapped around a mug of hazelnut coffee, watching sunlight stretch across my hardwood floors. It felt like the house itself was exhaling, like we were both learning how to breathe again. It had been 6 months since I handed him that gold envelope. 6 months since I looked a man dead in the eye. A man who once told me I couldn't survive without him, and let him witness just how wrong he was. In that time, he faded like background noise. A couple of emails from his lawyer, a few blocked calls from strange numbers that didn't fool me. Once, I saw his truck 2 streets over, parked behind Miss Ruthie's azalea bush, engine idling like hesitation itself, but he never came to the door, and truth be told, he didn't need to, because whatever door he thought existed between us, it was gone, closed, boarded, bricked over with silence and self-worth. It was never about getting him back. It was about getting me back. And I did. Piece by piece, I reclaimed the woman I'd let shrink to fit inside his shadow. I took up space again, spread out across my bed like a queen, danced barefoot in my kitchen to Al Green and Etta James, onions caramelizing slow in butter, lit candles for no reason, ate strawberries straight from the bowl, took long baths with lavender oil, no interruptions, no questions about dinner. Freedom didn't look like fireworks. It looked like mornings without dread, afternoons with silence that didn't sting, evenings where I could finally hear myself think and not flinch at the sound. At the hospital, things bloomed too. They offered me a regional manager position, bigger office, more pay, and a chance to mentor nurses the way I wish someone had mentored me. When I signed the offer letter, my hand didn't tremble this time. No second guessing. No permission needed. I walked into that role like it had my name embroidered in the fabric. One day, a new nurse named Angela stopped me in the break room. She was young, still breaking in her shoes, still believing caffeine could fix exhaustion. "Miss Dolores," she said, eyes wide, "how you stay so calm? Everybody else panics when things go wrong, but you just glide." I smiled, stirring my coffee slow. "Baby," I said, "I've already lived through worse. A malfunctioning IV machine don't scare me." She laughed, not understanding. But one day, she will. Because calm doesn't come from luck. It comes from surviving chaos and realizing it didn't deserve to keep your voice. Outside of work, I started volunteering with a women's nonprofit, helping others walk their own road to freedom. Some days I sat quiet, just listening as stories spilled out in fragments. Other days I spoke, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I told the truth. Simple. Straight. No names, no theatrics. Because this story was never really about him. It was about her. The version of me who stayed too long, kept too quiet, tried too hard. The girl who thought survival meant staying put, who mistook peace for obedience, who believed shrinking was holy. She deserved redemption, so I gave it to her. On my 49th birthday, I threw myself a party. First one I'd ever hosted that wasn't centered around somebody else. I catered it myself. Shrimp and grits, baked mac and cheese, collard greens with smoked turkey, peach cobbler from scratch. The smell alone could have healed a broken heart. The music floated through the rooms. Frankie, Beverly, and Maze, Anita Baker, a little Chaka Khan when the crowd loosened up. The laughter was loud, but the joy was louder. Folks danced in my living room until the walls felt like they were swaying right along with us. And when the night started to settle, I stood up with a glass in my hand, candles flickering soft around me, and raised a quiet toast. To peace, I said, and the paperwork it took to protect it. Everyone laughed, clapped, shouted, "Amen!" and tapped their glasses. But I meant every word, because peace, I'd learned, isn't passive. It's not quiet submission or blind patience. It's active, it's strategic, it's patient, it's built, and it's mine. A few nights later, after the guests had gone and the music faded, I found myself in the living room again. Soft jazz on the radio, candles burning low. I went to the closet and pulled out that old manila folder, not because I needed to, just because I wanted to remember. The papers were still crisp, legal, clean, each one stamped with the evidence of a woman who refused to drown quietly. Every page was a chapter of a story no one could take credit for but me. I slid the folder closed and sat there for a moment, fingers tracing the edges like a prayer. Then I made a decision. I didn't put it back in the linen closet this time. I called Nia, told her to swing by. When she arrived, I handed her the box, the same fireproof one that once held every piece of my quiet rebellion. She frowned a little. "Auntie, what's this?" "It's not just paperwork," I said. "It's a blueprint for when you're ready to build something nobody can take from you." Her eyes glossed over, but she didn't cry. She just nodded, hugged me long, the kind of hug that said she understood more than her words could. We stood on the porch after, barefoot on the wood still warm from the day's sun. The breeze lifted my hair, carried the smell of jasmine from the fence line. As she got in her car and pulled off, I looked up at the stars, thousands of them scattered like a promise, and I whispered to the night, to the man, to the memory of who I used to be, "You said I wouldn't survive without you." Then I smiled. Not only did I survive, I retired you, with grace, and my name on the deed. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.